If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 21, Tony and Captain America quarrel. Insomnia and missing Wanda. Extra chapter. After sharing the details of the day's events, Wanda received approval from the other Avengers. With their nods of agreement, it was clear that her efforts were acknowledged. As the clock struck midnight, she excused herself to rest, leaving the conference hall. Inside the conference room, Captain America, Hawkeye, Vision, Natasha, and Falcon watched Wanda's retreating figure. Natasha was the first to break the silence. It seems that the counseling from the psychiatrist worked. Wanda acted alone and solved the problem this time. Captain America, eyebrows raised, sought confirmation. Is this true? Did she take the initiative? Natasha nodded affirmatively. Yes. Captain America and Hawkeye both showed their approval with nods. Vision and Falcon, still more acquaintances than close allies to Wanda, followed suit, nodding along. It seems that psychiatrists can be helpful to superheroes, too, Captain America remarked with a slight smile. He then suggested, if anyone feels the need, go ahead and book an appointment. Tony can cover the bill, he's got plenty of resources. Just as the words left his mouth, a 3D projection flickered to life in the center of the room, revealing Tony Stark. Hold on, if you're going to use my money, you need my approval. Without missing a beat, Captain America asked, do we have your approval, Tony? Tony pondered for a moment before responding with a noncommittal, maybe. Captain America's demeanor turned serious, but Tony, unfazed, continued, okay, let's move on to the main issue. According to Friday's analysis, the Avengers' public image improved by 26% thanks to Wanda's actions. Her personal approval rating jumped from 31% to 66%. He added, what I'm saying is, to maintain our reputation, we need to do more and talk less. Avoid unnecessary damage and be strategic like Wanda. She focused on her target and used her brain. Tony's tone, though factual, carried a hint of condescension that irked Captain America. Crossing his arms, Captain America retorted, are you suggesting we care more about property than the safety of our team? That we don't use our brains when we fight? Tony, his gaze unwavering, replied, I'm not saying anyone should act without thinking. I'm saying we need to be more mindful and minimize collateral damage. Captain America, visibly annoyed, stepped closer to the hologram. Tony. Tony pointed at Captain America, his voice cutting. I don't have time to argue with someone who only knows how to use force. Captain America, his frustration evident, shot back, do you think you're not part of why the citizens have lost faith in us? Your reckless actions led to the Sokovia incident. The tension in the room was palpable as the two leaders clashed. The other Avengers exchanged uneasy glances, knowing this argument wasn't just about strategy but a deeper disagreement on leadership and responsibility. Tony, not backing down, retorted, you're right. But under your leadership, let's see if we can regain that trust. Prove to the world that they can believe in us again. With that, Tony's projection vanished, leaving a heavy silence. Captain America, anger simmering, slammed his fist on the table. Disband. Go back to your quarters and rest. We'll meet again when the next mission comes up. As the team dispersed, Wanda was back in her room, her thoughts fixated on Lorien. She searched online for information about him but found little. Lorien's reputation seemed confined to whispers among the elite, with almost no presence in the public domain. The few articles she did find referred to him as the top psychologist, the most handsome doctor, and the enigmatic boss. Despite the scarcity of information, Wanda devoured every detail. Lying on her bed, she stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying their moments together. The memories of their encounters were a stark contrast to her past filled with pain and loss, her parents' death caused by a Stark Industries bomb, her brother's heroic death during the Ultron incident, and the devastation of her homeland, Sokovia. Meeting Lorien had introduced a series of firsts into her life, sharing milk tea, feeling respected, experiencing genuine laughter, and tasting the beginnings of love. These were emotions and experiences she had never known before. Tonight, Wanda's mind was consumed with thoughts of Lorien. Whether her eyes were open or closed, she couldn't shake his presence. It was a sleepless yet wonderfully hopeful night, filled with the promise of a future brightened by his influence. Chapter 22, Hugging Photos Exposed. Stephen is shocked. Late at night, Lorien drove his Ferrari into the building's internal parking lot. The sleek car purred to a stop, and he stepped out, heading for the private elevator that would take him directly to his penthouse. Once inside, he kicked off his shoes and grabbed a bottle of whiskey from his well-stocked wine rack. Sipping his drink, he walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window that offered a breathtaking view of the city below. Lorien exhaled, savoring both the taste of the whiskey and the memories of the recent night. The warmth he felt in the dark corner earlier still lingered. It was a moment of genuine connection that he couldn't easily forget. If he were to deny enjoying that feeling, he would be lying to himself. The brief interlude, filled with soft breaths and shared warmth, made him lose track of time, something he rarely experienced. Standing there, gazing out at the cityscape, his eyes roamed from Stark Tower to the Osborne building. He took another sip and sighed, contemplating the nature of happiness and freedom. Hero? Wealth? Power? Ability? Fame? He mused aloud. What truly makes people happiest? He knew the answer wasn't found in any of these. True happiness, he realized, comes when these things are merely the extras in life, not its core. The greatest ability, he reflected, is not doing what you don't want to do. This, he concluded, was the essence of freedom and contentment. Lorien never aspired to be a superhero or a member of the Avengers. Those roles didn't represent real happiness or freedom to him. His ideal life was one where he could act according to his desires and avoid what he detested. His principles and morality defined his limits, not the expectations or judgments of others. For Lorien, happiness was found in simplicity, a stable, contented life shared with someone special. As he pondered this, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction with his chosen path. The next morning, Lorien awoke naturally around 8. He followed his usual routine, a refreshing shower followed by a drive to work. As he settled into his office, reclining in his chair with his legs propped up, he turned his attention to the 3D projection TV beside him. It was only 9:10 a.m. when the door swung open, and Stephen, a fellow surgeon and friend, walked in. Without turning his head, Lorien quipped, "It's 9:10. I hope you're not here to invite me to a party at this hour." Stephen shook his head as he approached, concern evident in his eyes. "No, not at all. I saw the New York report yesterday. In one of the photos, you're standing next to a superhero. You were there during such a dangerous situation? Are you all right?" Lorien nodded calmly. "Yes, I was there, but nothing happened. I slept well last night." Relieved, Stephen sighed. "That's good to hear." But then, he pulled out his phone and showed Lorien a screenshot. "But what about this photo?" Lorien glanced over and saw an image of himself and Wanda in a close embrace. He recognized the scene instantly. "Ah, someone caught that moment on camera," he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. The photo captured Wanda looking particularly enchanting, nestled against Lorien's broad chest. Despite her regal presence, in that intimate moment, she appeared almost delicate. They seemed like a perfect match. "Not bad," Lorien remarked, handing the phone back to Stephen. "I'm quite satisfied with the photo. Any others?" Stephen shook his head. "No, just the usual pictures. Nothing extraordinary." He paused, then continued, "But it's only been a few days, hasn't it? Not even a month. No wonder you're not interested in ordinary girls, you like superheroes." Lorien chuckled, unable to refute Stephen's observation. Reflecting on his time in the Marvel Universe, it did seem like he had a penchant for extraordinary women. Stephen's playful accusation wasn't far from the truth. "You win," Lorien conceded with a smirk, returning his attention to the TV. Stephen, not ready to let the matter rest, added, "I think you're aiming even higher. Maybe you'll end up with one of the gods next." Lorien pondered the idea briefly. "Gods? Well, there are some intriguing possibilities there," he mused. But he quickly refocused, waving off the notion. No. I haven't planned that far ahead. I'm a go-with-the-flow kind of guy. If I meet someone special, I won't let her go, but I'm not fantasizing about people I don't care for." Changing the topic, Lorien patted Stephen on the shoulder. "How about you? How are things with Christine?" At the mention of Christine, Stephen's demeanor shifted subtly. "Well..." He hesitated. The relationship with Christine was complicated, teetering between friendship and something more. It was a delicate balance, not unlike the complex relationships often depicted in Japanese manga, where characters could remain in limbo for years. Stephen's uncertainty mirrored his feelings from the events in Doctor Strange 2, where he regretted not fully exploring his relationship with Christine. Chapter 23, Tony's Arrival. I wish I had met him earlier. Stephen looked constipated. Lorien knew there was no clear solution to this issue. Of course, he wasn't a matchmaker or a close confidant to certain girls. So, he simply said, some things are hard to explain. There are things you won't understand unless you experience them. So, I have one piece of advice for you, I'd rather make a mistake than do nothing. The meaning of this sentence was positive but could also be applied to love. Stephen pondered and understood its significance. All right, I got it. Good. Lorien nodded indifferently, ending the conversation. This wasn't his love affair to deal with. Moreover, when it came to love, Lorien never actively pursued it. He just waited patiently for the right opportunity. Why? Because, well, it's love. Next, after Stephen confirmed that Lorien wasn't injured from the previous night, he prepared to leave. Being a top surgeon, Stephen had major surgeries almost every day and didn't have much free time to spend with Lorien. Stephen checked the time on his watch and said to Lorien, I have another surgery at noon, so I need to head out. Goodbye, Lorien. Goodbye. Lorien waved to Stephen. Just then, the office door swung open with a crash. A man in a sleek suit, wearing a high-tech watch and sunglasses, with a small mustache, appeared at the door. He asked, Are you in a counseling session? Should I wait outside, go home and wait for news, or can I pay to skip the queue? Upon hearing this cool and confident voice, Lorien knew who it was without looking. Tony Stark. Iron Man. Stephen recognized the famous superhero. Strictly speaking, Stephen and Tony had met before Tony became Iron Man, but they weren't well acquainted. No. Hearing the term Iron Man, Tony waved his hand dismissively. I'm not in the suit, so I'm Tony Stark today, not the superhero Iron Man. I'd like to have a normal conversation. Even speaking casually, Tony's demeanor was still a bit showy. Yes, a bit show-offish. Tony had a way of speaking that made even serious people feel uncomfortable. But luckily, Lorien and Stephen weren't very serious people. Stephen might be more so in the future as Sorcerer Supreme, but Lorien would never be. Okay, Mr. Stark, Lorien gestured for Tony to enter. We're just chatting, you can come in. I didn't expect to meet a superhero yesterday and another today. It's an honor. While saying this, Lorien only prepared a chair for Tony and thought to offer a bottle of milk tea for each of them. Tony looked at the milk tea but didn't drink it yet, as Friday, his AI assistant, was analyzing it. Adjusting his suit, Tony asked, Actually, I already have your business card. But I didn't expect to see you today. How many superheroes do you know, including me? This wasn't a simple question. With yesterday's encounter with Wanda, today's visit from Tony, and his previous acquaintance with Banner, it was 3 in total. Lorien took out a photo of himself with the Hulk and showed it to Tony. 3, and Bruce Banner, he replied. Wow! Tony examined the photo closely. This is a great picture. I've never had a photo like this with the Hulk. Mostly because I didn't dare. I'm a normal person, and you're a normal person too, but you managed to do it. On the other side, Stephen was stunned. You actually know the Hulk? How do you know so many superheroes without telling anyone? Sensing Stephen's thoughts, Lorien shrugged. He was a client first, then a friend. After Tony put the photo down, he looked at Lorien and Stephen, saying, the best psychiatrist in the United States and the best surgeon in the United States. I should have met you guys sooner. Then I wouldn't have had such severe anxiety attacks or dealt with all that shrapnel in my heart. Tony's words struck a chord. Lorien and Stephen glanced at each other, recognizing the truth in Tony's statement. Tony had faced issues that they could have helped resolve. Lorien took a sip of his milk tea before responding. And now, I can sense your motives for coming to me. 2 of them are like Bruce Banner, 2 are like the Avengers, 2 are like me, and 4 are like curiosity. Tony looked surprised as Lorien uttered the last words. Isn't that right? Chapter 24, Tony is shocked. Is this milk tea for sale? Extra chapter. In Tony's shrunken pupils, Lorien saw a spark of realization. Lorien had just said something that clearly shocked Tony. After hearing these words, Tony sat up straight, adjusted his clothes, then looked at Lorien and extended his hand. Tony Stark. It seems I overestimated my own understanding, Tony admitted. Lorien extended his hand with a smile. Lorien. A psychiatrist with a bit of character. At the same time, since Stephen would eventually become the Sorcerer Supreme, Lorien asked everyone to introduce themselves. Stephen Strange. A surgeon, Stephen added briefly. After the introductions, Stephen realized Tony's main purpose was to see Lorien, not him. And with surgery time approaching, Stephen decided to leave. I have an operation at noon, so I need to head out, Stephen said. Lorien nodded. Have a good trip. Tony waved his hand. Good luck with the surgery, doctor. With that, Stephen left, and the conversation between Lorien and Tony began in earnest. Lorien didn't mention the cost of his services to Tony. There was no need, Tony had plenty of money. Of course, Lorien wouldn't overcharge just because Tony was rich. All right, we can get into details. Where do you think we should start? Tony asked, taking off his sunglasses and looking at Lorien. Lorien took a sip of his milk tea and replied, let's start from the beginning. First point, Bruce Banner. Tony nodded, signaling for Lorien to continue. Regarding Bruce Banner, it's simple. I don't know either. The last time we spoke was at the end of last year, so we haven't seen each other for several months. But I saw on the news that Banner was involved in the Sokovia operation. Logically, you should know more about his current whereabouts than I do. So, where is he now? Tony was silent for a moment, then exhaled deeply. Well, I don't know either. After the Battle of Sokovia, Hulk and a Quinjet disappeared simultaneously. We searched for a long time but came up with nothing. With Tony's technological prowess, finding someone on Earth should be easy. So, if they couldn't find him, there was only one conclusion. Hulk traveled into space with the Quinjet, Lorien stated. Tony sighed, closing his eyes and nodding. It was evident he thought the same. All right, the second point, Lorien continued. The Avengers issue isn't something for me to solve. You're concerned about what to do with the Avengers, right? Tony looked at Lorien in surprise, nodding in agreement. Yes. The internal problems of the Avengers shouldn't be my concern. That's your responsibility. The question isn't about the Avengers issues but about your concerns with them. These are different matters. Lorien paused, then continued. The Avengers' problems can't be fixed overnight. Debating your existence is a broader issue. There are too many people in this world, each with their own thoughts and emotions. You can't please everyone. So, if you're trying to force the Avengers to change the status quo, it's impossible. You need to go with the flow, wait for the right moment, and then make a change. This requires patience and building strength. Lorien, a psychiatrist, wasn't one to give vague, philosophical answers. Psychological issues often stem from real-life difficulties. The best therapy is to help solve these real-life problems. Tony put his sunglasses back on, deep in thought, while Friday, his AI assistant, analyzed Lorien's advice. The voice in Tony's ear echoed the analysis. Sir, the probability of the Avengers immediately changing the status quo is 0.16%. Following Dr. Lorien's advice, the less you do, the fewer mistakes you'll make. You need to continue upgrading your armor until the opportunity to change things presents itself. Friday's voice, though indifferent, provided a realistic outlook. The analysis suggested that Tony should refrain from taking action for now and focus on improving his technology. After hearing Friday's analysis, Tony removed his sunglasses again and placed them on the seat. Leaning back in his chair, he picked up the milk tea and took a sip. Well, it seems there are times when I can't push through no matter how much I want to. Tony shook his head, slightly frustrated, and continued drinking his milk tea. Lorien saw no need to elaborate further and continued, then the third point. Wait. Tony interrupted. He was staring at the milk tea with wide eyes, then took another sip before turning to Lorien. What is this called, milk tea? Do you have the recipe? Or do you sell it? I'm confident it could replace 30% of the coffee market share in the United States within a year. Lorien. Tony, you're impossible. Chapter 25, Wipe your mouth with a suit. Do you sell this fried rice? Dash. Tony had always been a businessman at heart. As they continued their conversation, it became clear. The moment he drank the milk tea, he immediately saw its commercial potential. Wanda and Gwen, who had tasted the same milk tea, only thought about how delicious it was. They never considered its money-making possibilities or market potential. Of course, Tony didn't think much of the money to be made from milk tea. Even if it could generate hundreds of millions in revenue, it was nothing compared to the value of his clean energy projects, like cold nuclear fusion. What were a few $100 million compared to the fortune Tony could make from a single box of arc reactors? For Tony, the appeal of the milk tea lay in its taste. He wanted to be able to drink it every day, much like the burger stand under Stark Tower. People might think it's just a mobile stall, but it's there because Tony loves their burgers. Lorien, on the other hand, found the idea of introducing milk tea to the US and seeing the upper class switch from coffee to milk tea amusing. It wasn't about the money, it was about the fun and the novelty. Considering this, Lorien saw no reason to guard the milk tea recipe. It was just good tasting, there was nothing magical about it. So, he nodded, opened a drawer, and handed the milk tea recipe to Tony. Here, take it. I'll take 30% of the profits. I don't care about the rest. Tony took the recipe, scanned it with his sunglasses, and then tucked it into his jacket. No problem. Tony didn't care about the money the milk tea could make as long as it didn't lose money. Lorien, on the other hand, was just interested in the novelty. The deal was settled with just a few words. Now, we can continue our conversation, Tony said. Lorien was about to move on to the third point, but he checked the time and saw it was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Business and showing off could wait, hunger couldn't. It's time for lunch. I think we should eat something, Lorien said, snapping his fingers. Tony paused. He now understood the frustration of being interrupted mid-sentence. All right, Tony agreed. He glanced at his watch and started contacting someone. I'll have Pepper arrange for the armor to deliver some food. Guaranteed luxury, Boston lobster, or estate wine, Michelin chef's main course, and more. Wow! $1 billion iron suit delivering food. Classic Tony. But Lorien shook his head, stood up, and walked toward another room. Forget it. Let's just eat the egg fried rice I prepared. Tony was taken aback. Eat what you prepared. He spread his hands incredulously. Is your cooking as good as what I just mentioned? You're making me eat instant food. Lorien ignored Tony's skepticism and brought out 2 covered plates from the next room. It wasn't any fancy meal, just the egg fried rice Lorien had won in a lottery. It had been sitting in his space for days, and it would be a waste not to eat it. Tony stared at the plates in disbelief. Hey! You don't want luxury food. You're making me eat fast food with you. To Tony, fried rice, served so quickly, seemed like fast food. He couldn't understand why Lorien would choose this over the gourmet meals he could provide. Lorien placed the plates on the table and returned to his seat without looking back. If you don't want it, I'll eat it myself. Tony looked at the egg fried rice in front of him. Finally, he sighed, resigned to his fate, and sat down. All right, let me, Tony Stark, see how it tastes. If it's not good, I'll buy your building and raise your rent. With that, Lorien and Tony picked up their cutlery and started eating. The egg fried rice looked simple, but it had a magical quality. The moment the rice grains wrapped in egg entered their mouths, a sense of satisfaction and a refreshing taste flooded their brains. It was almost instinctual to keep eating. Lorien ate it slowly, savoring each bite. But then he heard a strange sound. Someone was devouring the food voraciously. Who could it be? Could it be Tony? Lorien turned to see Tony, his face almost buried in the rice plate, shoveling the egg fried rice into his mouth with no regard for his image. No longer the composed superhero or billionaire, Tony looked like a man who hadn't eaten in days. Lorien chuckled and turned back to his meal. Less than a minute later, he noticed Tony wiping his mouth with the sleeve of his expensive suit. Tony looked at Lorien and nodded seriously. What is this called, egg fried rice? Do you have the recipe? Or do you sell it? I'm confident it could replace 50% of the fast food market share in the United States within a year. Lorien. Hadn't he heard this before? Oh right, Tony had just said something similar about the milk tea. Chapter 26, Tony is also taken. Punch out of Get Off Work. Extra chapter. Dash. Although Tony wanted to delve into the recipe again, he knew it wasn't about the money for Lorien. But he couldn't resist the thought of eating this egg fried rice every day. It was reminiscent of the burger he craved after his return from Afghanistan, simple, comforting, and perfect. Lorien chewed his egg fried rice slowly, savoring each bite. He looked at Tony and shook his head. No. Nothing. Tony was stunned. No recipe? Exactly, Lorien nodded. It's just something I whip up. It's limited edition, so enjoy it while it lasts. Tony's eyes widened in mock despair, and he covered his forehead with one hand. Oh no. This is the saddest news I've heard all year. Lorien continued eating, unfazed by Tony's dramatics. Tony, however, couldn't tear his gaze away from the fried rice, staring at it like it was a masterpiece. This made Lorien quickly finish his meal, fearing Tony might actually ask for the leftovers. But Tony wasn't done yet. He leaned in with a glint in his eye. Okay, listen, Lorien. Do you have any more of that egg fried rice? I'll pay $10,000 for another plate. Lorien, now done with his meal, cleaned up and wiped his mouth with a tissue. He shook his head. We'll talk about it next time. It's almost afternoon now, and I have 3.5 hours before I get off work. Time is precious, so let's get to the main point. Tony sighed, saddened. The egg fried rice, gone, just like that. It's better than any burger. Lorien watched as Tony lamented over his beloved fried rice, reflecting on how something so simple could captivate such a genius mind. He wondered if Tony would ever want a hamburger again after this. But Lorien stayed focused on the task at hand. In Tony's mix of heartache and determination, Lorien helped him navigate his thoughts. They discussed Tony's concerns and issues, including his responsibilities with the Avengers and his personal anxieties. Lorien balanced his responses, addressing 20% of his own curiosity and 40% to genuinely help Tony. Tony's struggles were multifaceted, but Lorien's advice was straightforward. Eat well, sleep well, work hard, and live without regrets. Either spend all your money or die without regrets. Otherwise, life isn't worth it. Tony seemed to finally understand. Lorien's words were a reminder to embrace life fully and avoid overburdening oneself. This philosophy mirrored what Tony needed to apply with the Avengers, avoiding impatience and recognizing that meaningful change often takes time, unless spurred by significant events. Nodding thoughtfully, Tony decided to channel his energy into upgrading his armor to address future threats. His curiosity about Lorien, however, was quickly satisfied. Lorien reiterated that he was just an ordinary psychologist with a few unique skills, nothing more. All right, Tony said, straightening his suit and standing up. He extended his hand in thanks. Your words have really helped me. You wouldn't believe it, but I had a fight with Captain America last night. That old, rigid guy from World War II put a lot of mental pressure on me. But thanks to you, I think I know what to do now. Lorien nodded, pleased. But he noticed that Tony extended the same hand he had used to wipe his mouth. With a slight smirk, Lorien offered his opposite hand. Realizing his mistake, Tony coughed and switched hands. Before leaving, Tony's eyes wandered to the fridge in the corner. Spotting the iced milk tea, he quickly grabbed 2 bottles and explained, one for my assistant Pepper, and one for my driver Happy. It's not like I want 2 more bottles for myself. With that, Tony exited with his usual flair, promising to transfer the payment for the counseling session to Lorien's account. True to his word, a 6-figure sum soon appeared in Lorien's account, far exceeding the usual fee. But if it made Tony happy, Lorien wouldn't complain. Lorien glanced at the clock. It was 4:45 p.m. Time to clock out soon. Chapter 27, Gwen invites you to perform. Wanda invites you to the Ferris wheel. What a wonderful thing it is to get off work. Imagine it, nothing to do after work except eat, play, and then sleep. That is, if no one disturbs you during those precious last hours. But Lorien wasn't so lucky. Tony had been gone less than 15 minutes when... Creak. As the wooden door slowly opened, Gwen peeked her head in, carrying a green backpack with 2 drumsticks sticking out. Lorien couldn't help but be amused by her cautious entrance. Gwen, don't tell me you're here for a session, he teased. Gwen shook her head. Nope, not today. I'm here to invite you to our band's performance this afternoon. Lorien raised an eyebrow. Gwen was a drummer, and he knew how passionate she was about her music. She looked at him with a shy, hopeful smile. Lorien, would you like to come? Faced with such a sincere invitation, Lorien felt it was like the band had sent out a rallying cry. I can go, but... Lorien paused, watching Gwen's anticipation grow. But... Gwen echoed, a bit nervously. But you'll have to wait until I get off work. Lorien glanced at his watch and smiled. Less than 10 minutes. Gwen sighed with relief and playfully rolled her eyes at Lorien for keeping her in suspense. Her playful gesture was endearing. Lorien grabbed 2 bottles of iced milk tea from the refrigerator and handed one to Gwen. Then he tidied up his things, ready to clock out. It was almost 5 p.m. Click. He locked the door and punched out. Check-in successful. Obtained, Phoenix Power Fragment X3. Hearing the rewards for checking in, Lorien showed no outward reaction but quickly analyzed the significance internally. Initially, he had obtained only 1 fragment. Now he had 3 at once. Why? Was it because he was closer to the cosmic timeline or the key players in it? Putting that thought aside for now, Lorien considered his current count of Phoenix Force fragments. The Phoenix Force, in its full omnipotence, reached the level of the supermultiverse, challenging entities as powerful as the Living Tribunal. But in fragments, its strength was less clear. He absorbed the 3 new fragments, using purification to eliminate any lingering phoenix wool within them. The energy surged through him. Previously, with just 1 fragment, his strength was at a sub-father level. Now, with 4 fragments, he felt his power surpassing the level of Heavenly Father, approaching that of a single universe entity. To put it into perspective, a sub-father level being was akin to Thanos without any Infinity Stones. Heavenly Father level compared to beings like Odin. A single universe level entity could wield and master the full power of the Infinity Stones or belong to the ranks of the Celestials. With 4 fragments, Lorien felt he had already transcended the Heavenly Father level. The control over energy he now possessed meant he could potentially destroy an entire planet. Feeling the raw power flowing through him, Lorien noted his enhanced abilities: telepathy, teleportation, infinite energy, mass energy conversion, matter reorganization, creation from nothing, manipulation and destruction across all time and space, space and time stillness, absorption, transformation and release of any energy. Formidable. Very formidable. Yet, despite these newfound powers, Lorien remained grounded. As he and Gwen left to watch the band's performance, he decided that, for now, appreciating life's simpler pleasures, like the company of friends, was enough. As they descended in the elevator, the doors opened with a ding, revealing a surprised Wanda. Seeing her, Lorien and Gwen paused. Wanda. Lorien said, recognizing her immediately. Wanda, who had initially looked down to avoid being noticed, looked up, meeting Lorien's gaze. She was dressed strikingly today: a knee-length skirt, stockings, long boots and a dark red trench coat, a significant departure from her usual attire. Her well-groomed hair and refined features added to her allure. Wanda, are you here for a session? Lorien asked. No, Wanda replied, shaking her head. She glanced nervously at her outfit, making sure everything was in place. I know you get off work at 5, so I came to see if we could finish watching the Ferris wheel like we didn't get to last night. As she spoke, Wanda exuded a mature charm that was captivating. Gwen's lively sweetness seemed youthful in comparison to Wanda's sultry allure. Chapter 28, Gwen's band performance. Wanda's Ferris wheel. Dash. 2 beauties, one tall and one petite. Although such scenery is beautiful, very beautiful. It is even one of Lorien's favorite views. But the problem is Wanda's Ferris wheel or Gwen's band performance. Which to choose? If Gwen came first, does that mean Wanda's plans should be cancelled? No. But if Lorien spends the evening with Wanda on the Ferris wheel, what happens to Gwen's band performance? Should Gwen be ignored? Definitely not. Lorien's nearly single universe level brain worked quickly and reached a solution in 0.01 seconds. First, Wanda's Ferris wheel is planned for the night, while Gwen's band performance is in the afternoon. So, can they both be managed together? Only children make choices, adults find ways to have it all. But how to manage both? This will test the charm of language. Ahem. After learning that Wanda came to find him to go on the Ferris wheel, Lorien took the opportunity to signal Gwen beside him. Wanda, this is a high school student I met at a medical exchange meeting before. She's not just interning at Osborne Industries, she's also a drummer in a band. She came here to invite me to watch their band performance. Would you like to come with me? After the band's performance in the afternoon, we can go to the Ferris wheel to see the night view of New York in the evening. Lorien's words made the two beauties of different sizes look at each other. After their initial surprise, they introduced themselves. Now, back to Lorien's issue. Gwen was definitely fine with it. Although she felt a sense of rivalry with Wanda, the more people who could come to see the band's performance, the better. Wanda, on the other hand, thought about it. If she didn't agree, there would be no chance for the Ferris wheel tonight. She had spent a long time choosing her clothes today and had no reason not to go. So Wanda nodded and readily agreed with Lorien's plan. No problem, let's go watch the band's performance first. Great. Time management at its best. Then Lorien looked at the lineup of 3 people, one tall and one petite, including himself. The only issue, his Ferrari is a 2-seater. What to do with no room for all? Gwen, is the band playing far away? Lorien decided to ask Gwen first. Gwen shook her head. Not far. It's near Riverside Park across from Central Park. We can get there with a short walk. That's good. If it's that close, there's no need to take a taxi or drive, especially considering Manhattan's congestion. Lorien turned to Wanda again. Wanda, you? I'm fine, Wanda said, smiling. After what happened yesterday, a night has passed, and I don't care about other people's gazes anymore. Right. If Wanda still cared, she wouldn't have come dressed like this to see him today. What are we waiting for? Let's go. So Lorien waved his hand. With a tall beauty on his left and a petite beauty on his right, they walked towards the band's performance venue. Walking through the streets of Manhattan, surrounded by various luxury stores, electronics shops, gift and souvenir shops, and food and beverage outlets, they enjoyed their stroll. Lorien handed out 3 bottles of milk tea, so now each of them had one to sip as they walked. In the densely populated areas of New York, Wanda was soon recognized. Scarlet Witch. It's Scarlet Witch. My goddess. She's my goddess. Where is she? Where is she? Why can't I see her? Give me a location. Scarlet Witch is following a man. They're drinking the same drink together. The whispers started, and soon everyone around was looking to spot Wanda. Lorien felt Wanda's nervousness. He shook his head helplessly, put away the milk tea, and took each beauty by the hand. The wind is strong and the call is clear. They had to avoid being surrounded. Otherwise, the crowd would gather just out of curiosity. Lorien had to move quickly, taking both women with him. After a while, they reached the band's performance venue. Lorien sighed in relief. Wanda, you might still have trouble with people recognizing you in the future. The difference is that now it's a good thing, but it can still be troublesome. Wanda, recalling similar past incidents, looked at Lorien for advice. What should I do? 2 choices, or actually just one, Lorien said, raising a finger. Your magic should be able to teleport, so you can travel faster and avoid crowds. Or maybe you could use your magic to temporarily change your appearance or make it so that others don't recognize you. I've mentioned this before. So, ultimately, it all comes down to improving your magic. Wanda nodded thoughtfully. Okay, it seems I need to practice more. But I'm not sure how to start. Chapter 29, Another Mutation Crisis. Spider-Gwen is here. Extra chapter. Wanda now has chaos magic but lacks systematic training. She's like a kid with a tiger tank but doesn't know how to drive it. There are 2 solutions to this problem. One is to go to Camartage and learn from the Ancient One. The second is to get the Darkhold as soon as possible. The negative effects of the Darkhold aren't an issue for Lorien since he has the ability to purify it, similar to how he purified the will on the Phoenix fragments. But that's in the future. For now, Lorien doesn't need to intervene. Wanda wouldn't accept such a significant gift from Lorien without earning it. They'll discuss it later. Gwen. Here. Come on. You're the only one missing. At this moment, Mary Jane Watson and Betty Brant, members of Gwen's band, waved from the stage, calling Gwen over because the performance was about to begin. I have to go first, Lorien. Can you help me with my bag? Give it to me. Seeing everyone in place, Gwen quickly handed her bag to Lorien, grabbed her drumsticks, and headed to the stage. She took her place behind the drums. Dong dong dong. The accompaniment started. Gwen glanced through the crowd at Lorien, who smiled and nodded in encouragement. Wanda, standing beside him, mirrored his supportive gesture. Ting! With the final note of the accompaniment, the band began their performance. Gwen's bandmates started strumming their guitars and bass, and Gwen herself rhythmically and energetically played the drums in front of her. Nice! Not bad! People around them commented as they listened to the first part. They continued watching the band, moving to the high-energy instrumental metal music. This was the intense BGM that the public often enjoyed. Bang bang bang! Gwen's drumming resonated deeply with the audience. Each beat made them nod their heads or tap their feet in sync with the rhythm. This was pure music that moved the body, the hallmark of good music. Lorien tapped along with Gwen's drum beats, and Wanda, standing next to him, whispered, "Even though I don't fully understand it, the band's music is great." "It's fine as long as it sounds good," Lorien replied with a smile. "The purpose of music is to sound good. If it doesn't, it's not good music." Wanda thought about it and agreed. As the band's music spread, more people gathered in front of the stage. What started with 20 or 30 spectators soon grew to nearly 100. The increasing crowd energized the band members, making their performance even more powerful. Time passed slowly. It was 6:47 p.m., and as the sunset faded, the sky grew darker. The band's performance was nearing its end. Boom! The show concluded with Gwen's final powerful beat. "Oh! Pa, pa, pa!" Some audience members cheered while others applauded. Gwen and her bandmates thanked the crowd, then she quickly ran to Lorien, looking up proudly. "Lorien! How was it?" Gwen looked up at him, eager for feedback. "Very good, you." "Ah!" Suddenly, a terrified scream came from nearby, followed by more shouts. "Help! There are mutant rats! Giant lizards! There's a lizard that looks like a human! They're heading for the bridge!" As the crowd panicked, Lorien and Wanda turned and saw people running on the street. The audience in front of the stage quickly dispersed, and soon it looked like a riot in New York. Gwen sighed, "Why are they here again?" "Again?" Lorien smiled. Gwen looked down, embarrassed. I mean, they were on the news the other day." As the crowd fled through the streets, it looked like a scene from a disaster movie. Lorien sighed and, seeing Wanda's calm demeanor while holding his hand, asked, "Do you want to stop it?" Wanda didn't answer directly. "I have the ability. If I encounter it and turn a blind eye, I won't be able to sleep at night." Her words made Lorien laugh. Hearing him laugh, Wanda turned and playfully hit Lorien, but he understood her meaning. If they hadn't come across the situation, it would be different. But now, having seen it, ignoring it would leave a lingering guilt. Lorien nodded and turned to Gwen. "Gwen, you go back first. Wanda and I will go check it out." He said this deliberately to give Gwen some time to change into her Spider-Woman suit. Gwen nodded obediently, "Okay, I'll wait for you downstairs at your building. Come back soon." "No problem." Lorien nodded. Then he rushed to the scene of the incident with Wanda, who was holding his hand. Before leaving, Gwen glanced at Wanda holding Lorien's hand and playfully curled her lips. Then she quickly left. 3 minutes later, a figure leaped between the tall buildings. Spider-Gwen had arrived. Chapter 30, Wanda beats up the lizard man. Gwen pulls a cart. "Oh my god! Oh my god! Run! Everybody run! Lizardman, what kind of monster is this?" As the crowd fled in panic, Lorien and Wanda pushed upstream, moving against the tide of terrified people. This time, Lorien didn't need to encourage Wanda. She followed him with determination until they reached near the Manhattan Bridge. This bridge connects Manhattan Island to the mainland and to Queens. At this moment, people were abandoning their cars and running down the bridge. Lorien and Wanda looked towards the commotion. A lizard man was wreaking havoc on the bridge. Cars appeared as fragile as paper in front of it. With a casual kick, bang! The lizard sent a car sliding several meters away, as if someone had kicked a chair. Chi-chi-chi! The tires screeched as they rubbed against the ground. "Ah!" The passengers inside screamed in terror. The lizard man paused, then turned towards the car window at the sound. "Ah!" The screams grew more desperate. With a cruel smile, the lizard man kicked the car hard from the side. Boom! The entire car flew off the bridge, plummeting towards the water. The people inside screamed in despair. The lizard man turned away, but after a few steps, it realized something was wrong. It hadn't heard the car hit the water. The lizard man frowned, walking to the edge to look. In the next moment, boom! The car was wrapped in a red energy field and flew back, striking the lizard man and sending it flying. Pa! Lorien clapped for Wanda beside him. Good job! Yes, it was Wanda who had just intervened. As the car flew out, Wanda's hands glowed with red energy, enveloping the falling vehicle. Then, as the lizard man approached the edge, she pulled the car back towards it. When the lizard man was sent flying, Wanda guided the car gently to safety. Bang! Chirp! The car came to a stop just below the bridge. Seeing the people inside, Wanda reached out and tore the deformed car door off with a burst of red energy. Mother! A boy about 12 years old ran out. My child! A woman in the crowd, clearly the boy's mother, ran to him, and they embraced. Lorien nodded with satisfaction. It was like a scene from a classic American movie. Wanda had done well. Great job, Wanda! Roar! Before they could even celebrate, the lizard man's roar echoed from the bridge. It stood on a truck, howling at the sky. It looks pissed off, Lorien observed calmly. Seeing the lizard man for the first time, Wanda hesitated. There are still people trapped on the bridge. I want to lure it down and then fight. That's a good plan, Lorien agreed, looking at the bridge. He then checked the time and added, if the bridge is damaged, we might miss our Ferris wheel ride tonight. Wanda was stunned by his last remark. What? If the bridge is damaged, we can't go on the Ferris wheel? Absolutely not. Get down, right now. Suddenly, Wanda's voice rang out beside him, filled with anger. It startled Lorien. He turned to see Wanda's hands glowing with chaos energy, gripping the lizard man and pulling it. Who? The lizard man, standing on the truck, was taken aback by the powerful force pulling it away. It thrashed, shaking nearby cars and grabbing onto a bridge pole to resist. But the chaos magic was no joke. Come down! With a cry, Wanda waved her hands downward. Roar! The lizard man slapped a car away before being yanked off the bridge. Boom! It crashed hard onto the road, creating a crater on impact. Scarlet Witch! Scarlet Witch! Superhero! Destroy that lizard man! Get rid of that ugly beast! The crowd cheered. But someone noticed something alarming. The car the lizard man had knocked away earlier was teetering on the bridge's edge, about to fall into the sea. Look at the car on the bridge. It's going to fall. What should we do? There's someone in that car. He's opening the window and waving. It's a child. Hearing the commotion, Lorien looked towards the bridge. Indeed, a car was about to tumble into the water. Wanda reached out, ready to use her energy to save the car. Roar! But at that moment, the lizard man emerged from the pit. What should they do now? Everyone around wondered whether to prioritize the lizard man or the car. But in reality, there was no choice to make. Puff! As the sound of web slinging filled the air, Spider-Gwen swung over the crowd, leaping onto the bridge. It's Miss Spider. She's teamed up with the Scarlet Witch before to handle crises. Chapter 31, Wanda is angry. Iron Man is here again. Dash! Amid the crowd's astonishment, Gwen leaped onto the bridge. Just as the car started to fall, she positioned herself at the top of the bridge and shot spider silk downwards with both hands. Puff! 2 strands of web immediately wrapped around the falling car. Gwen tugged hard, anchoring the rear end of the web to the bridge. Then, she slid down the webbing to the front of the car, grabbing the door with one hand and extending her other hand to the little girl inside. Give me your hand, I'll get you out, she called gently. The little girl, frightened by her surroundings, hesitated at first. But Gwen's soothing voice reassured her, and she reached out. Seeing the distance was close enough, Gwen didn't wait. She grabbed the little girl by her clothes and swiftly pulled her out, using her legs to propel them both back onto the bridge. Pa! After safely placing the bewildered girl on the ground, Gwen clapped her hands and spoke again. Go find your mom. Thanks, sis, the girl mumbled. With that, Gwen shot out another web line, sticking it to the bridge, and swung off towards Lorien and Scarlet Witch. The little girl stood there, dazed by the rapid turn of events. She looked around, still processing. What just happened? She wondered. Why do I feel like someone was talking to me? And now I'm back on the bridge? Where's Mom? Meanwhile, as Gwen went to save the car, Wanda turned her attention to the lizard man. She raised her hand, her voice low and ominous. If you break the bridge, I will turn you into a pile of pulp. Lorien blinked, taken aback. What's going on? He thought. Wanda wasn't like this before. He was surprised by Wanda's mature, confident, yet fierce demeanor. She seemed so different from the timid woman he once knew. In the next moment, buzz. The air crackled as scarlet magic gathered. Roar. Sensing the threat, the lizard man roared and hurled a large stone at Wanda. The massive rock arced through the air, but Wanda remained unfazed. She extended her left hand and clenched her fist. Suddenly, the half-meter-wide stone froze in mid-air. Wanda glanced at the stone, then back at the lizard man. Her voice was calm, almost cold. Taste your own medicine. With a flick of her wrist, she sent the stone hurtling back towards the lizard man, faster than it had been thrown. The creature, realizing it couldn't dodge, raised its arms to shield its chest. Boom! The impact was a dull, crushing sound. The force knocked the lizard man off its feet and into a wall, leaving a deep dent. Lorien watched in awe, enjoying the spectacle as if he were in a first-person action movie. Actually, he was in the first-person perspective. Right beside the Scarlet Witch. Good job, Lorien said, giving Wanda a thumbs up. Humph! Wanda snorted, not at Lorien, but at the lizard man with disdain. Muttering to herself, she added, You dare to ruin my plan to see the Ferris wheel with Lorien. You deserve this. Lorien raised an eyebrow, having heard her muttering. What's wrong, Lorien? Wanda asked, blinking. Nothing, he replied, spreading his hands. Keep going. As soon as he spoke, a voice interrupted them. Ladies and gentlemen, need a hand? Iron Man at your service. The flamboyant voice belonged to Tony Stark, clad in one of his latest suits. It looked like the Mark 45 armor, equipped with the AI, Friday. Tony was still developing nanotechnology, so his current suit hadn't incorporated it yet. He pressed a button, and the armor, number 46, seamlessly attached itself to him. Bang! Landing with a thud, Tony surveyed the scene, from the crowd to Wanda to Lorien and finally to the lizard man and Gwen. Already handled? He asked, looking at Lorien. You're late. It's almost over, Lorien replied, folding his arms. Here to steal the credit. Tony was about to explain, but Lorien smiled and added, just kidding. You must be here to investigate. Hey! Wanda looked puzzled. Tony didn't come in person. Snap! At that moment, the faceplate of the Mark 45 opened, revealing an empty interior. Tony's voice, accompanied by his usual mannerisms, emanated from the armor. You're much smarter than Captain America. At least 10 times smarter. I'm still in my villa in Los Angeles. Even if I flew here on a suborbital plane, it would take more than 10 minutes. So, I remotely controlled the armor from Stark Tower when I got the alert. That's me, as you see. Chapter 32, The Most Affectionate Person in New York. Wanda has turned bad. Dash. Lorien immediately saw through Tony's situation. Wanda, starstruck, gazed at the Iron Man armor with wide eyes, while Lorien, hands casually in his pockets, continued speaking. Then get to investigating quickly. This lizard's been causing havoc for days, and we can't keep handling it alone. He added, this is clearly a case of mutant genes. If someone can control their spread, you superheroes will be under fire until you are forced into retirement. Tony's suit nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Before turning to investigate, he approached Lorien, lowering his voice. I suspect this is tied to the Osborn Group. But even with Stark Industries' clout and my status as Iron Man, taking on Osborn head-on could backfire. We need a third party, someone who isn't an Avenger, to take action. Tony's point was clear. The Osborn Group was a behemoth, and while Tony had the resources to challenge them, doing so could jeopardize the Avengers' reputation and stability. The scrutiny could be devastating. So, Tony sought help from outside the usual circle. Among those capable and not affiliated with the Avengers, Lorien and Spider-Gwen stood out. Lorien nodded thoughtfully, good analysis. It's the safest and most effective approach. Exactly, Tony replied with confidence. But Lorien quickly followed up with a smirk, but why should I help you? I'm not driven by some heroic obligation. Can't I just enjoy my ordinary 9-to-5 life? Wanda, siding with Lorien, spoke up. She understood his desire for normalcy. Stark. Not everyone wants to be a superhero, she asserted. Lorien just wants to live a simple, happy life. If you need a third party, go ask that spider lady instead of dragging Lorien into this. She pointed to Gwen, who had just landed on a nearby rooftop, her figure silhouetted against the cityscape. Hey! Gwen blinked, taken aback. She had just arrived and was already being singled out. What had she done wrong? Gwen quickly ran through her actions. No, she hadn't done anything wrong. She was helping citizens and fighting crime. But Wanda's accusatory gesture made her nervous. The last thing she wanted was to leave a bad impression on Lorien, especially not as Spider-Gwen. Tony controlled the Iron Man armor to turn towards Gwen on the rooftop. Hey, Ms. Spider, we need to talk. But Gwen shook her head firmly. No talking. Tony, back in Los Angeles, scratched his head in confusion, and his Iron Man suit in New York mimicked the motion. He looked back at Lorien, puzzled. What now? Lorien shrugged, how should I know? I'm a psychologist. I can guide you, but I'm not here to fix your problems. Tony was at a loss. People weren't willing to chat. Should he force it? Wait. Force it? Based on the data gathered by Friday, Spider-Gwen was a righteous superhero. She would step in to resolve crises and fight criminals. So, maybe she would assist if she knew more. Tony turned back towards Gwen, ready to persuade her. Listen, Spider. But Gwen was already gone. She had webbed her way into an alley and disappeared. Tony. Turning back to Lorien, Tony could only shrug in defeat. Lorien said nothing, instead turning to Wanda with a look of deep affection. Wanda blushed under Lorien's gaze, moving closer to him instinctively. Okay, Tony relented, controlling the Iron Man suit to wave goodbye. I'm leaving. You two keep dealing with that lizard jerk. I'll continue gathering evidence on the mutation. When the time is right, we'll reveal it and let the Osborn group self-destruct. Sound good? With that, the Iron Man suit's jets roared to life, lifting off and flying away. Lorien turned just in time to see a furtive figure slinking towards the beach. Spotting Lorien's gaze, the figure leapt into the sea and made its escape. Damn it, it got away! Wanda exclaimed, her fierce demeanor returning. It's okay, Lorien reassured, patting her head gently. With your power, facing it again will be as easy as squashing a bug. Yeah, Wanda nodded, then suddenly grabbed Lorien's hand and started running. Wait, what? Lorien was confused. Let's go. The bridge is intact, so we can still ride the Ferris wheel. Wanda said excitedly, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Lorien glanced back, but Gwen is still waiting for us downstairs. It's fine. We'll enjoy the ride first, then come back and take Gwen for another round. Are you sure? They said it was too hard to fight the lizard man, so they let it get away. Lorien sighed, thinking to himself, Wanda, you've become mischievous. Chapter 33, Sneaking straight to the Ferris wheel. Magic controls the driver. Dash. Lorien didn't expect this turn of events. Wanda, usually so composed, now wanted to have some fun behind Gwen's back. Where did she learn such behavior? Or was this her own spontaneous idea? Lorien silently chastised Wanda for her mischief, but he followed her without a word. Right now, Wanda was clutching Lorien's hand, leading him across the bridge where their battle had recently ended. Cars were scattered around, abandoned in the aftermath. The scene felt surreal and strangely romantic as Wanda pulled Lorien from one end of the bridge to the other. When they reached the other side, she flagged down a random car. Wait, Wanda, this isn't a taxi, Lorien warned, trying to be the voice of reason. Time is of the essence. If we're late, Gwen will notice. We'll compensate the driver generously, Wanda replied confidently. With that, she waved her hand in front of the driver, sending a wave of scarlet magical energy into his mind. The driver stared blankly ahead, gripping the wheel. Wanda quickly pulled Lorien into the back seat and instructed, to the Ferris wheel. The driver, now under Wanda's spell, silently pressed the accelerator and drove off. Lorien was stunned. You know these kinds of spells. This wasn't just simple interference magic. Wanda had performed a full-on hypnotic control, a much more complex and difficult feat. The difference was like conjuring a fireball versus summoning a fire dragon. I'm not sure, Wanda shook her head, looking at her hands before meeting Lorien's gaze. I just really wanted it to work. I really wanted it. Just use your magical abilities, and you'll succeed. Lorien muttered, marveling at her talent. Damn genius. Just knows how to use her gifts effortlessly. What else does she have besides talent? Isn't it just her curvy figure, sexy body, long legs, and long hair? All right. Lorien admitted it. Emergency moments indeed bring out hidden potential. But as the car neared their destination, Lorien's curiosity grew. Wanda, why are you so anxious today? Wanda sighed, we're leaving for an overseas mission tomorrow night. Someone's modified Chitauri weapons and is smuggling them to conflict zones abroad. Steve wants to stop them before they reach the battlefield. She explained that she might not see Lorien for days and didn't want to miss the chance to fulfill their plans. Lorien was about to express his frustration with the constant foreign interventions but held back, understanding her perspective. It's always the same story. Foreign wars stirred up by political agendas. The president wants the fighting to drag on rather than resolve quickly, Lorien muttered. Wanda nodded in agreement. She harbored a deep resentment towards weapons and those who profit from them. They had destroyed her home, killed her family, and ravaged her country. The thought of weapons caused her to distrust the very nation she now lived in. She had no love for the Avengers either. If given a choice, she would pick Lorien over them without hesitation. As they arrived near the Ferris wheel 10 minutes later, Wanda hurriedly placed a wad of cash on the passenger seat. Seeing this, Lorien added some more. Let's go, Wanda said eagerly, pulling Lorien out of the car. He'll be fine once we're gone. They ran to the base of the Ferris wheel. Behind them, the driver snapped out of his trance, startled to find a small stack of $100 bills on the seat beside him. Wow! The driver exclaimed, counting the money. 1, 2, 3, 10. $1,000. He shouted. My God! This will cover our medical loan for another month. And we won't have to sell the car. Meanwhile, Wanda excitedly reached the ticket booth at the Ferris wheel, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. 2 tickets, please. She asked the attendant. The attendant shook his head sympathetically. Sorry, the Ferris wheel is undergoing maintenance today. It's operational, but we can't allow anyone to ride it. For a moment, Wanda's bright eyes dulled, her excitement replaced by a wave of disappointment and sadness. Lorien felt her change in mood keenly. He leaned close and whispered in her ear with a reassuring smile, I have a plan. Wanda's eyes lit up again, filled with hope and curiosity. Chapter 34, Ferris Wheel Fire. Unlucky Gwen. Extra Chapter. A word from Lorien. Wanda turned her head instantly and stared deeply into Lorien's eyes. Between their gazes, there seemed to be a thread of love, binding them closer. Lorien began to speak, but Wanda's enthusiasm cut him off. Before he could finish, Wanda covered his mouth with a fervent kiss. Lorien? What's happening? Again? Why am I always on the receiving end? Not that I mind, cough, cough. For a moment, the world around them blurred as they got lost in each other. This time was different. Wanda took the initiative, unrestrained by her role as a superhero or her status as an Avenger. At this moment, she was simply a woman in love, savoring the sweetness of the moment and the taste of Lorien's lips. After a few intense seconds, tisk, Lorien gently pushed Wanda away, catching his breath. There are too many people here. You are a superhero, he reminded her softly. I don't care, Lorien, Wanda replied, her eyes sparkling with affection. I'm just an ordinary person with some special abilities. Impressed, Lorien smiled. You've learned well, he remarked. She had taken his words to heart, embracing her unique nature. All right, let me tell you how we can ride the Ferris wheel, Lorien said, scratching Wanda's cheek playfully. Leaning in close, he whispered, use your chaos magic to get them to open it for us. Wanda's eyes lit up, but she hesitated, glancing at the Ferris wheel. But they said it's under maintenance, and there's no one on it. That's just an excuse, Lorien explained. Big attractions like the Ferris wheel have to undergo regular maintenance by law. But the legal requirements are stringent, and frequent upkeep is costly. They claim to be under maintenance to avoid having people ride it, pretending they've done the work. But they usually schedule maintenance during the off-season, not now. It's just a way to skirt the rules. Understanding dawned on Wanda. Those sneaky, she grumbled, eyeing the Ferris wheel angrily. Lorien quickly added, but remember, it's not the employees' fault. They're just following orders. So after we get on, use your magic to block the view, like the tinted windows on my Ferrari. That way, we can enjoy our ride without causing any trouble for the staff below. Wanda nodded, appreciating Lorien's thoughtfulness. Before casting her magic, she took his hand, looked into his eyes, and said, Lorien, you're wonderful. You consider everyone's situation, even an ordinary employee's. That's why I love you. You're truly amazing. This heartfelt confession stemmed from Wanda's deep feelings. Since meeting Lorien, she had felt a natural affinity towards him, which grew into love through their everyday interactions. Faced with Wanda's sincere words, Lorien didn't react like a typical shy protagonist, nor did he respond aggressively. Instead, he gently stroked Wanda's cheek, gazing into her eyes. Wanda, you're different. Unlike other superheroes with their obsessions, you seek happiness and peace. That's what makes you special. You live for yourself. After his words, silence filled the air, but Wanda's gaze grew more captivated. She pressed her cheek against Lorien's hand, murmuring, we are of one mind. That's why I fell for you. Without wasting another moment, Wanda led Lorien to the staff. As they approached, she extended her left hand, weaving her scarlet magic into the employee's mind. The staff member immediately opened the gate with a polite, please come in. Wanda smiled and walked in with Lorien. They settled into one of the Ferris wheel's cabins. Once the door closed, Wanda tapped on the glass, transforming it into one-way glass. They could see out, but no one could see in. As the Ferris wheel began to rise, the city lights of New York spread out beneath them. It was 8 p.m., and the view grew more expansive as they ascended. The Ferris wheel, the largest in New York, rose to nearly 200 meters. Wanda held Lorien's hand tightly as they took in the breathtaking view. As they reached the peak, Wanda turned her gaze from the horizon to Lorien's face. She stared at his eyes, nose, and lips. Lorien knew it was his turn to be bold. Without hesitation, he pulled Wanda close and kissed her deeply. Meanwhile, down below, Gwen waited impatiently. Why haven't they come back yet? Comment. 21 Comment. Vote. Chapter 35, Chapter 35, The Potential of Chaos Magic. Wanda's Dual Personality. Chapter 35, The Potential of Chaos Magic. Wanda's Dual Personality. Downstairs of the North Building, Gwen had changed back into her previous clothes and was waiting in the lounge for Lorien and Wanda. She was growing increasingly impatient. Something's off, Gwen thought, calculating the time. With Wanda's abilities, they should be back by now. She glanced outside, but there was no sign of Lorien or Wanda returning. I guess I'll wait a bit longer. They should be back soon. Time passed, and eventually, Lorien and Wanda returned, both looking slightly weakened. Gwen immediately noticed them and rushed over, carrying her small green backpack. You're finally back! Gwen exclaimed. Let's go before the Ferris wheel closes. Lorien, feeling a bit guilty about the recent experience, nodded and said, yes, let's go. Internally, Lorien promised himself, Gwen, I'll make it up to you later. Wanda, on the other hand, was beaming with contentment, a soft smile playing on her lips. She greeted Gwen warmly, let's go, the Ferris wheel is about to close, right, Lorien? Lorien, still battling his inner guilt, nodded again, yes, let's go. But in reality, the Ferris wheel's operation didn't concern them anymore. Wanda had the power to open or close it at will with her magic. Damn, Lorien thought, still reprimanding himself. Wanda is such a good girl, and I've led her down this path. What have I done? Regardless, half an hour later, the trio arrived at the Ferris wheel. Lorien and Wanda had just been there, and with a subtle wink from Wanda, they all boarded the cabin once again. Wow, Gwen marveled, pressing against the window as the Ferris wheel ascended, revealing the dazzling night view of New York. It's so beautiful. The Ferris wheel stood at 200 meters, not extraordinarily high compared to some buildings Gwen had seen, but it offered a unique perspective. From their vantage point, Manhattan spread out like a meticulously arranged circuit board, with Central Park in the middle resembling a CPU. It was both intricate and breathtaking. Lorien, suddenly inspired, turned to Gwen and asked with a smile, "Gwen, how's your friend doing?" Gwen stammered, caught off guard. She thought quickly and replied, "Yeah, she's doing fine. She's trying to adjust to new things, just like you suggested, Lorien." Gwen continued with more confidence, "I'm sure she'll be able to come out and meet people soon. Just give her a little more time." Looking at Lorien with determination, Gwen added, "She'll be ready to tell everyone about herself soon. I promise." Lorien nodded approvingly. "It seems my advice helped your friend. It's good to know she's making progress. Tell her to take her time and get comfortable. There's no rush." Gwen felt a warm glow inside, melted by Lorien's gentle encouragement. She nodded sweetly, "Okay, I'll let her know." As the Ferris wheel slowly completed its round, Gwen pointed excitedly at the entrance. "Look, it's the Black Widow." Lorien and Wanda followed Gwen's gaze and saw Natasha standing at the gate. "Oh no!" Wanda murmured, looking at Lorien with a hint of sadness. "I have to go. I need to prepare for tomorrow's mission." "It's okay," Lorien reassured her, stroking her head. "We'll meet again in a few days. You can always visit me when you're free. And remember, with your magic, you can create portals and travel anywhere you want." "Really?" both Wanda and Gwen asked in surprise. "Yes, I'm sure," Lorien confirmed. "Magic is incredibly powerful, and Wanda's magic is among the strongest. Believe in yourself, Wanda. There's nothing you can't do." Wanda looked at her hands, marveling at the potential Lorien saw in her. "I'll learn these abilities as soon as I can," she declared, filled with newfound confidence. As the cabin door opened, Lorien, Gwen, and Wanda stepped off the Ferris wheel and approached Natasha. "I'm sorry, Wanda," Natasha began, "but the Lizardman crisis needs to be sorted out tonight, so I had to come find you." "Understanding," Wanda nodded. She hugged Lorien tightly before turning to leave, her demeanor shifting back to the efficient Avenger. "Let's go, Natasha. I don't want to waste any time." Lorien watched Wanda walk away, marveling at how seamlessly she transitioned from being a playful, affectionate partner to a focused, mission-driven superhero. Chapter 36, Gwen's house has a curfew. George's inquiry. Extra chapter. Lorien and Gwen watched as Wanda walked away. The two of them exchanged a look and sighed helplessly. "Superheroes are just so busy," Gwen commented. Lorien nodded. "You always have something to do, but it doesn't happen every day." "But you said it's okay, I can't rest anyway," Gwen added. Lorien murmured to himself, "Anyway, I don't want to be a superhero. It's too busy and tiring." Gwen thought about it and nodded in agreement. "I don't want to be one either. It feels like I'm just working a part-time job. If possible, I think it would be better to be a freelance superhero. If you encounter a criminal, you can fight him. If not, just live a normal life." "That makes sense," Lorien agreed, raising his fist. Gwen bumped fists with Lorien, indicating they were on the same page. But then again, it turns out that Spider-Gwen's personality is really like this. Among all versions of Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen is definitely the most down-to-earth and straightforward one. She handles things better and is also the most sensible. That's why Gwen just said that she doesn't want to be a professional superhero but instead wants to be a free superhero. This resonates well. Lorien's thoughts are quite similar to Gwen's. Professional? No. Just out of interest? Okay, no problem, done. That's the difference. Wanda had much the same idea. That's why the three of them were drawn to each other. Lorien glanced at the time. It was already 9:30 in the evening. Only then did Lorien remember something important. He looked toward Gwen and asked, "Gwen, do you have a curfew at home?" Gwen's family is wonderful. Her father is the commissioner of the New York Police Department, so having a curfew is quite normal. Gwen's eyes widened in realization. "What time is it now?" 9:30, Lorien replied. "It's over. Lorien, I have to be home by 10 at the latest." Before Lorien could say anything more, Gwen grabbed his hand and they started running. Let's go. Indeed, Gwen does have a curfew, and given her father's position, it might be very strict. So, Lorien was dragged out by Wanda around 7 or 8 in the evening, and now Gwen was dragging him back again at 9:30. What does this mean? Rocking back and forth, hey? They needed to return from one area to another within half an hour. Fortunately, Spider-Gwen doesn't live in the farthest borough of Queens like other Spider-Men. Otherwise, they really wouldn't be able to get back in time. And so, the two ran across grass and streets, stopping a taxi going their way. They crossed the bridge and the road, and finally, at 9:55 p.m., the taxi stopped on the road not far from Gwen's house. Lorien paid the fare and quickly escorted Gwen home. Finally, at 9:58, Gwen said, "Lorien, goodbye. Have a sweet dream tonight." "Sleep well, Gwen," Lorien replied with a wave. "Also, your performance was great." Hearing the last comment, Gwen almost jumped for joy. She blew Lorien a kiss and, full of joy, quickly took out her key, opened the door, and walked in just in time. "I'm back. No time out." Lorien stood outside, watching until Gwen was safely inside. He then turned around, preparing to leave. "Wait a minute, sir. I think we need to talk." At this moment, a figure emerged from the side door of Gwen's house and called out to Lorien. Lorien turned and saw it was George Stacy, the New York Police Department Commissioner. "Mr. Lorien," George greeted him as he walked over. He gave Lorien a friendly nod. "I think we should talk for a bit," George suggested, gesturing in a slightly amiable manner. "Maybe we could sit down somewhere and chat." Lorien checked the time. 10:03. There was enough time for a conversation, so he nodded. "Let's go." As they walked toward the nearest bar, George began, "Sir, where did you meet my daughter Gwen?" He then quickly apologized, "Sorry, I'm a police officer, so my way of speaking might be a bit odd." George only mentioned he was a police officer, not that he was the commissioner. He genuinely wanted to know the person who had brought his daughter back safely. And George's attitude was commendable, his way of speaking quite respectful. So Lorien nodded, indicating it was fine and that he was willing to chat. "We met at a medical exchange meeting. Your daughter was with a research team." George's face lit up. Meeting at a medical exchange meant Lorien was involved in the medical field, suggesting he was knowledgeable and capable. Doctors are highly regarded in the United States, and being associated with medicine usually indicated a promising future. "It was at the medical exchange meeting," George repeated. "I heard Dr. Stephen Strange and a notable psychiatrist attended. It was a gathering of elite professionals." "Sir, which team were you with?" George inquired, intrigued. Lorien paused briefly before responding. Chapter 37. George was shocked. "Are you Lorien?" Good question, Gwen's dad, Lorien thought quickly. He realized he needed to navigate this conversation carefully. Acting too clever might put George on edge. It was wiser to let George uncover the details on his own. This approach would make Lorien appear modest and unassuming, which was precisely what he wanted. Lorien responded calmly, "I went there with a friend." That was true. Stephen Strange was his friend. Lorien wasn't lying or stretching the truth. George nodded, satisfied with the answer. "Ah, your friends must be impressive as well." Why was George pleased? Because in his experience, those attending such events in groups or with mentors were often interns, assistants, or students. But going with a friend suggested professionalism and independence. This implied that Lorien was likely a doctor, and his friend probably was too. This revelation was a relief to George, as it showed that his daughter's circle included competent and accomplished people. George didn't want his daughter associating with street kids or those with uncertain futures. But friends who were doctors? That was highly reassuring. As they continued their walk, their conversation deepened. George grew increasingly impressed with Lorien. He seemed almost ready to declare Lorien his future son-in-law right there on the street. They wandered down the street until they came upon an oak bar. Not all bars in the US are loud, dance-centric establishments. Many have their own unique themes and atmospheres. Some, like whiskey bars, specialize in specific beverages. The oak bar they found was known for its wines aged in oak barrels. This bar was charmingly rustic, decorated entirely in oak wood. Inside, it was peaceful, with the gentle tunes of a radio playing in the background. It was the perfect place for a quiet chat. They entered, and since George had invited Lorien, he took care of the bill. "Would you like something to drink? Can you handle alcohol?" George asked. "Sure, I don't drink often, though. Something light would be nice." "2 light drinks, please," George told the bartender. Soon, 2 large 1-liter glasses were placed before them, each with a sturdy handle perfect for holding. They both took a sip. George observed Lorien closely. Lorien's admission that he didn't drink much fit well with George's image of a responsible and thoughtful individual, attributes George highly valued. After taking a sip, George opened up. "Honestly, I was worried Gwen might not choose her friends wisely. But seeing you now, I'm relieved." Lorien took a sip and replied, "Mr. George, Gwen is very smart. You shouldn't see her as the little girl she once was. She's growing up and forming her own ideas. Your role should be to guide her, not to control her." George's eyes lit up at Lorien's words. This young man had wisdom beyond his years. "You're right," George agreed. "That's why I don't restrict her from making friends. But I need to ensure she chooses the right ones. Of course, I don't mean you in a negative sense. You see, as a police officer, I've witnessed a lot of society's darker side. It makes me worry about her safety and future." Lorien nodded understandingly, taking another sip. "You're absolutely right. It's crucial to raise daughters well, focusing on their character and education. That's how you help them become strong and good people. You must have supported her decision to attend that medical exchange meeting." Lorien's comments struck a chord with George. He was deeply impressed by Lorien's insight and maturity, which were far beyond what he expected from someone his age. "Yes, exactly," George admitted, putting down his glass. "I wanted her to meet accomplished individuals at the exchange." As they spoke, George checked the time. It was nearing 11 p.m. He knew that coming home too late might not sit well with Gwen's mother. So, he decided to ask directly, "By the way, I don't think I caught your name." "Lorien," Lorien replied with a knowing smile. "Didn't Gwen mention it?" "Wait a moment." George's eyes widened as recognition dawned on him. "Lorien. Gwen has talked about you at the dinner table. This is your name." The moment Lorien mentioned his name, George, the police chief, connected the dots. Gwen had spoken of a Lorien before, but he hadn't pieced it together due to his preoccupation with the Lizardman case. "Damn it, I should have realized sooner. I've been so caught up with the Lizardman incident," George muttered to himself. Then, another realization struck him. "So, your friend is Stephen Strange," Lorien confirmed, finishing his drink and placing the glass on the table. "I went to the exchange meeting in his car that day." George was stunned. Chapter 38, Scandal with a Superhero. The Crossbones Incident. "Mr. George, I have to go home too," Lorien said, glancing at his watch. He stood up and added, "It's been a pleasure chatting with you. You're a wonderful father. Gwen is such an outstanding person, and that must be because of your influence." George smiled, albeit a bit awkwardly, the corners of his mouth twitching into a grin. "I've just tried to do my duty as a father." "You're doing great," Lorien reassured him. "Gwen is lucky to have a father like you." "And she's lucky to have a friend like you," George replied, his voice filled with genuine warmth. "You're quite impressive, Mr. Lorien." With those words, the mutual respect between the two men solidified. They shook hands firmly, sealing a new understanding and camaraderie. As Lorien walked away, George stood there for a moment, reflecting on their conversation. The realization that Lorien, who his daughter Gwen had mentioned casually, was none other than the distinguished Dr. Lorien, left him both astonished and proud. He replayed their talk in his mind, marveling at how casually Lorien had mentioned his association with top surgeon Dr. Stephen Strange and his own status as a renowned psychologist. George felt a mixture of relief and embarrassment. Relief, because Gwen had chosen her friends wisely, and embarrassment, because he hadn't pieced it together sooner. It was like discovering your child had struck gold while you weren't paying attention. How could he have known that the Lorien his daughter occasionally spoke of was actually Dr. Lorien? As Lorien turned the corner, George smiled broadly, even though the reality of the situation was a bit overwhelming. Being a police chief in New York was no small feat, but in the US, the prestige of a top doctor often eclipsed that of many other professions. And this doctor had a close bond with his daughter. The implications were huge. Lorien's status, combined with his connection to Gwen, created an overlapping of roles and influences that George had never anticipated. He wasn't sure how to proceed in their conversations moving forward. How do you chat casually with someone who holds such stature, both professionally and personally? Despite his newfound respect for Lorien, George realized he had to head home as well. But just parting ways abruptly after such a significant revelation didn't feel right. This left him in a bit of a quandary, pondering what to say or do next. Fortunately, Lorien sensed George's internal struggle. He decided to make things easier. "Mr. George, thank you for the evening. Let's keep in touch," he said warmly before turning to leave. George nodded, feeling a bit more at ease. "Yes, absolutely. Have a good night, Lorien." As they parted ways, Lorien walked briskly, eager to return to his apartment on the top floor of the north building. It had been a long, eventful day, and all he wanted was to relax. Back home, as he stepped into his apartment, he kicked off his shoes and collapsed onto his wide, soft bed. He let out a long, contented sigh. Hey! Reflecting on the day, Lorien felt a mix of satisfaction and fatigue. It had been a fantastic day, albeit a bit exhausting. Perhaps it was the mental strain of navigating social interactions and the unexpected developments. But no matter the tiredness, the day's events were undoubtedly rewarding. As he lay there, his thoughts drifted to the future. Tomorrow was another day, full of possibilities and hope. The next day, Lorien's routine of leisurely slacking off at work continued until the end of his shift. He knew that Wanda was off on a mission in the countryside, dealing with the Crossbones terrorist group. Meanwhile, the previous night's events had thrust Wanda and Gwen into the spotlight, elevating their status in society but also attracting some unwelcome attention. The internet was buzzing with news and gossip. Scarlet Witch battles mutant lizardman again. The goddess defeats the villain. Lizardman escapes into the sea. Mutant lizardman sighting. Does Iron Man's involvement indicate a tech company's secret project? Spider-Woman rescues children. Lifts a car with bare hands on the bridge. A true superhero. Who is he? The mysterious figure seen twice with Scarlet Witch and Spider-Woman. Scarlet Witch and Spider-Woman's shared boyfriend? Two superheroes linked to the same man. So scandalous, or just rumors? The headlines were all over the place, but the focus remained on Wanda and Gwen. Lorien's own involvement was more of a side note, albeit with some bizarre and entertaining speculations about his relationship with the two heroes. The gossip about sharing a boyfriend was particularly absurd, but Lorien took it in stride. After all, it was just tabloid fodder and didn't bother him too much. However, Gwen seemed to be dealing with something more significant. She had been moving around New York a lot lately, investigating and looking for something. Lorien could sense her determination but chose not to interfere unless she asked for help. He trusted that Gwen would come to him if she needed assistance. As for his friend Stephen Strange, he was buried in a hectic schedule of surgeries. Stephen had recently called Lorien to vent about his exhaustion. Although the work was lucrative, it was draining him physically and mentally. He even mentioned wanting to take a break soon and invited Lorien to join him for some racing and drifting to unwind. Lorien, always up for new experiences and with plenty of free time, readily agreed. So, in the meantime, he continued his laid-back approach to life, spending his days lounging and multitasking with TV, computer games, and his phone. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, while lazily flipping through channels, Lorien's attention was caught by a news broadcast. At 2:19 p.m. today, the Avengers successfully dismantled the international arms trafficking group, Crossbones. All members of the organization have been arrested. Scarlet Witch, descending like a goddess during the mission, used her magic to single-handedly neutralize the organization's most formidable forces. Civilians from various countries, including Wakanda, were rescued during the operation. This incident has been designated as the Lagos Incident. Chapter 39, Wanda's terrifying fighting power. Wanda's popularity soars. Extra chapter. Watching the news broadcast, Lorien saw the coverage of the recent Avengers mission. It was both expected and a bit surprising. He anticipated it because he knew the event was crucial. In the original storyline, this was where Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, accidentally caused significant collateral damage, injuring civilians and Wakandans alike. The incident was so severe that it triggered the Sokovia Accords. But now, things were different. This time, the incident had been resolved perfectly. And the hero who made it happen was none other than Wanda herself. The TV excerpt showed Wanda in action. Her expression was cold and focused, like an ice queen. She moved her hands with grace, and the enemy's jeeps and trucks were pinned to the ground in an instant. Then, with a powerful gesture, she sent the vehicles flying. The clip cut off there, but it was clear what followed. The enemies must have been in dire straits. Wanda's chaos magic grip was formidable, capable of crushing anything in its path. Lorien nodded with satisfaction. Wanda had grown significantly. She had evolved from someone hesitant to use her powers into a formidable, cold scarlet goddess in her public persona. Yet, this was just one side of her professional front. Wanda was, indeed, fascinating. Meanwhile, on the ground in Lagos, the Avengers were regrouping and preparing to evacuate after successfully dismantling the Crossbones operation. Captain America reviewed the report, nodding with approval. Everyone did a fantastic job. All the weapons have been recovered and are ready for destruction. You're all superheroes, truly exceptional. Applause filled the area. Wanda, standing a bit apart, gazed towards New York, lost in her thoughts. When the applause died down, she turned to Captain America and asked calmly, "When are we heading back?" The scene fell silent, filled with respect for Wanda's display of power. Just moments ago, she had demonstrated incredible strength crushing a jeep with one hand and a truck with the other. Her destructive capability had left everyone wondering if she now surpassed even the Hulk, who was missing. Captain America, smiling as he held the report, replied, "We should be able to head back this evening, Wanda." Wanda nodded, then walked over to a bench to rest. She picked up a world map lying nearby and traced a line from their location back to New York. Thousands of kilometers away. Wanda sighed inwardly. She longed to learn the teleportation magic Lorien had mentioned. If only she could master it now, she could return to New York immediately and be with him. But that skill was beyond her reach at the moment. She had to wait until nightfall to go back. "Wanda," Natasha called out, approaching from the side. She handed Wanda a tissue. "There's a drop of blood on your face. You should wipe it off." Taking the tissue, Wanda picked up a piece of broken glass about the size of her palm. She saw a drop of blood under her left cheek, trailing down her face. However, instead of detracting from her appearance, the blood made her look even more striking, like a vampire queen with a hint of scarlet allure. Snap! A war reporter in the distance captured the moment. The Avengers had arranged for this reporter, ensuring that all photos and footage would be reviewed before being released. The dramatic photo of Wanda wiping blood with a piece of glass would likely become iconic, as long as she didn't object. On the battlefield, Wanda had been the most photographed hero. Her powerful, mesmerizing actions had been captured perfectly. Back in New York, at Stark Tower, Tony Stark received news of their success. "Sir, here is the information," Friday reported after sorting through the data. Tony couldn't help but chuckle as he reviewed the details. So, they were dealing with enemies that Scarlet Witch could handle. But did they consider the consequences of resolving the crisis with force? What do the locals think about their homes being destroyed? He casually waved the digital material into the recycling bin. But Friday wasn't done. "Sir, while the Avengers may face some criticism and opposition, Scarlet Witch's popularity is skyrocketing. In the United States, many citizens are suggesting that Scarlet Witch should leave the Avengers and become a free superhero. Her popularity is now closely trailing behind yours and Captain America's. If this trend continues, it's expected that within 1 to 3 years, she could surpass both of you in popularity." Tony was taken aback. "Hey! Chapter 40, Sign in Superman Template. Spark Source. Godzilla. Dash." Tony was perplexed. How long had he and Captain America been in the spotlight? And now, they were on the verge of being overtaken by someone who had only recently made her debut? Tony scrutinized the stats that Friday had listed. In the ranking of superhero popularity, he and Captain America were undeniably at the top. But right below them was the Scarlet Witch, far ahead of the others. "All right," Tony said, pinching the bridge of his nose and shaking his head in exasperation. "How does a psychological counseling program lead to such a meteoric rise?" He sighed and muttered, "I guess I'd better focus on upgrading my armor. The nano-armor technology is about to break through." Tony had been staying home to work on advancing his nanotechnology research. The next day, as the morning sun bathed the earth in light, Lorien was still in bed. While busy office workers hurried down the streets with their sandwiches, heading to their jobs, Lorien remained in bed. It wasn't that he was asleep the whole time, he had been awake, playing games and generally avoiding getting up. Cough, cough. But once the clock hit 8:30 am, Lorien finally stirred. He got up and washed at 8:40 am, showered and dressed by 8:50 am, and by 8:55 am, he was downstairs, ready for the day. See? Perfectly punctual. Except he hadn't eaten breakfast yet. No problem, he'd just order takeout. Lorien spent the rest of the morning in a state of leisurely idleness. In the afternoon, a visitor arrived. The guest, looking troubled, confided, "I feel hopeless about the world and find no meaning in life. But I'm afraid of death, and the world seems full of dangers. What should I do?" Lorien sensed the person's anxiety and responded thoughtfully, "If you have the means, consider finding a project to immerse yourself in. Maybe buy a house on a hillside and create a personal sanctuary. Connect with like-minded friends. Or travel the world. There are places far more dangerous than here." It was clear that the visitor was a wealthy individual, bored and lonely. Yet, they seemed genuinely interested in Lorien's suggestion of building a refuge. And this wasn't just idle talk. In the US, building private shelters was a thriving business, catering to those with fears of insecurity. A personal sanctuary could be a perfect solution. After the guest paid and left, Lorien returned to his laid-back routine until the time came to officially clock out. Click. As the door closed, Lorien mentally said, "Check-in. Check-in successful. Obtained, Kryptonian Superman template." Kryptonian Superman. Essentially, the standard version of Superman. While not as powerful as the Silver Age Superman, who could operate on a multiversal scale, this version was still formidable, typically at a single universe level. It's a pity it wasn't the Silver Age Superman, Lorien mused. If it were, he could start at the multiverse level, capable of toppling the Celestials and making even the living tribunal nervous. Still, the standard Superman's physical abilities significantly boosted Lorien's own strength. At the very least, he didn't have to worry about being attacked by assassins. Superman's durability was renowned. As for kryptonite and other vulnerabilities, they could be managed with purification techniques. Lorien took a moment to review the other recent rewards from his check-ins. Reward: complete set of Tom and Jerry cartoons. Reward: Planetary Engine X100. Reward: Queen Medusa's Fierce Shield X1. Reward: Fire Source X1. Reward: Singularity Godzilla Pet Cub X1. Lorien stared at the list, slightly bewildered. Tom and Jerry cartoons were amusing but not particularly useful. And what was he supposed to do with 100 planetary engines? Move the Earth around the cosmos? Imagine Thanos arriving, only to find the planet gone and be utterly confused. The fire source was interesting, but its practical applications were limited for now. The most intriguing item was undoubtedly the Singularity Godzilla Pet Cub. Lorien had a vague recollection of Singularity Godzilla. It was one of the most powerful versions, essentially immortal and comparable to cosmic entities like the Celestials or Galactus. Since it was a pet, he figured he could raise it. Why not? After some thought, Lorien decided to send the cub to somewhere else, where it could grow and thrive. It had plenty of nutrition available there. With a snap of his fingers, Lorien teleported himself to the Pacific Ocean. The Phoenix Force made spatial travel effortless. Flying there with his newfound superpowers? Too much effort. One word: lazy. Next, Lorien enveloped himself in energy and sank into the ocean, bringing the baby Godzilla out of his system. As soon as the cub appeared, a soft, almost feminine whimper echoed in Lorien's mind. He patted the young Godzilla's head gently and thought, "Grow strong and healthy. I'll visit you regularly. When you're grown, perhaps you can travel through space to find me. Some power stones would be appreciated."
Thanks for listening.